Thank you again for the introduction there. I'm an Associate Principal at Perkins+Will here in Dubai, and what I'm going to be talking to you about today is not traditionally what we regard as healthcare, but something that has become an aligned area of practice for us. And that's really, rather than designing hospitals, it's about designing healthy districts of cities. How do we improve health in the everyday places that we live and work so that we don't have to rely so much on hospitals? And it's a concept that we call health improvement districts. I will show you a few examples that are both international and some more recent local examples. It is something that we are seeing as an increasingly important aspect of the real estate market here in the GCC as well. So why talk about this in the first place? There was a really interesting series of articles in The Guardian last year about 6 cities, what they termed 6 cities. And the basic idea is that cities in some ways do actually, they're destructive to our health, both in physical terms, because we put a lot of people in the same place, and so infectious disease has a perfect way to thrive, but also in terms of mental health. Cities are essentially regarded as potentially causing mental problems as well as physical problems. So this has prompted us in our research and our development work to look at how healthcare can happen in the city itself and how we can be most effective about healthcare. Why do 6 cities happen? There's a range of things, and we probe this in terms of trying to figure out what is it that we have to address. And there is both sort of physical areas and behavioural areas. And what we mean by that is, there is the physical environment of a city that has issues like air quality or water quality that directly impact on physical health. But there's also behavioural paths that cause sickness in a way in cities. And we see that in particular in the GCC, and that's something that I'll touch on. It's things like rising rates of obesity and the flow-on effects in terms of diabetes. It is sedentary lifestyles. There's all of these things that are leading us to a place of generally poorer health. And so what do we do as designers of the urban environment to address that? When we look at that, we also wanted to question ourselves, well, how relevant is it to us here in Dubai or in the GCC more broadly? And many of you, or I'm sure probably all of you, will be aware of both the global and local trends. In some respects, there is a sort of financial imperative. First of all, we see drastically rising healthcare costs. And in somewhere like the USA, that's leading to doubling of the cost of healthcare in the space of a decade. And at the same time, medical insurance reimbursements are going down. So there is a financial benefit to ensuring our cities are healthier. In the UAE, and in the Gulf generally, we have the highest rates of, some of the highest rates of diabetes diabetes. It's a sort of mental conflation of terms. Highest rates of diabetes and obesity. And that is to do with our lifestyles and the way that our cities are structured. We have cities that encourage sedentary lifestyles, driving everywhere, not walking. Try and walk somewhere in any Gulf city, and within 5 minutes you reach a broken connection. Simple things like that are actually the causes that we need to address. So this is a short video explaining our concept of health improvement districts.
Everyone wants to live in a healthy place. Healthy, vibrant, resilient. We think that these words should describe every community, and we're working on solutions to help make this a reality.
So that becomes a different model that has to be integrated within an urban environment. It's less about building more hospitals and more about removing the causes of sickness. In a lot of ways, it brings together the best practices of generally what is regarded in urban design as more pleasant, livable environments with what is actually healthier for us. So our approach sort of boils down to 4 key areas, or we've sort of distilled this down to 4 key principles. But in broad terms, what we really want to try and do is create a health improvement district where the focus is on living well rather than treating sickness. And so if we can eliminate the kinds of urban environments that promote unhealthy living, then we can actually address healthcare in a much more positive way. I'm going to show you a couple of projects here that really were the sort of inception of our concepts here. And this particular one was in Baton Rouge in Louisiana. Like most American cities, it's in very similar sense to places like the Gulf. It was about places that are separated and connected by vehicle connections. And so what you see here on the screen is a shopping mall on the right-hand side and a hospital on the left-hand side, both of them surrounded by acres of car parking, no way to walk from one to another. And so our job in this project was really to look at this entire district as a place, well, what do we do if we want to connect these places and make them healthier? And we looked at simple metrics like pedestrian connectivity. In broad terms, what we did in this project was really look at how all of these spaces could be connected in a way, bridging the sort of connections between things like the hospital and research facilities, bringing complementary living environments into those areas. And in doing so, really creating these living environments that promote health. Key part of that, and one of our special interests in our team here in Dubai, is the way that public space, green spaces are used to actually promote, as a primary example, people to walk from a hospital to a shop, or some sort of pollution source. Obesity and diabetes were very strongly linked with what has been called food deserts, where you don't have access to good quality whole foods. So where you see an absence of those kinds of facilities, we saw spikes in those types of lifestyle illnesses. So these were ways that we started this idea, and it led to a few design proposals or principles that we try to follow now. So for us as designers, this is boiled down to these sort of key areas. And the first one is about place. How do you create a place that encourages people to make a healthy choice? Make it easier for people to make a healthy choice than to make an unhealthy choice. We have the opposite scenario in a lot of the places that we live at the moment. But also make sure that you've got access to healthy foods. You have support for people of all abilities. And I'm going to show you one sort of project example for each of these principles. There's a lot in here, so I'm going to skim through it quickly. I'm happy to talk through in more detail afterwards. But this first example was a design competition in the UAE for a wellness district that basically was focused on this very idea of a health improvement kind of district, and complementary to the idea of medical tourism. What we sort of looked to do was to stop the segregation in the urban environment that we always get, and really to sort of blend this project, which sat within a larger project, to basically do these lifestyle things that we're talking about, where healthy choices were the obvious choices. And so in a lot of ways, the project really sought to redefine an entire urban development. Now, how do we do that? Essentially, this was just as the examples that I've showed you, it was about connecting what was already there. We had a number of hospitals, we had residential settings, we had commercial and office settings, but very little connecting them. So this project became a sort of linking element. So the project is sitting in the middle here. But what was more important is how it brought together all of the elements of the wider project. And this was very much driven through the creation of public spaces and networks that encourage healthy behaviours. So it literally started with a mapping effort of where would people walk to and from? How could we make it easier to walk than to get in a car? How would you promote cycling in these areas? And also, how do you create environments that are pleasant and sheltered so that you actually encourage people to be outdoors? It was driven by the idea of a healthy green heart of a community that was a space that was surrounded by a series of programmed activities, but where health and wellness becomes an everyday experience. And that needs to be something that is effectively integrated with the entire urban environment. Education was a really important part of this, in particular educating children on wellness. And so a core programmatic component was essentially a wellness education centre. So we tried to, as we do in many projects, think about sustainability, but sustainability that's focused on our goal of creating a wellness sort of experience, of getting people on their feet and active. We looked at things that were sustainability for sustainability's sake, net zero energy consumption, but also things about what makes it more comfortable, what makes it practical to be outside. We've all lived through a Dubai or a GCC summer and know what it's like. One of the key challenges in all the things we do is how do we make that livable? How do we make it so that people want to be outside? And we have the tools, we have the technologies, and what we essentially can do is create not something that is livable outside all the time, but is livable for more of the year, that it is tolerable to walk short distances. And so that was the approach with this project. And it's very easy to demonstrate how much of a significant difference simple things like shading or orientation to winds can make in terms of perceived outdoor comfort. Because to be realistic, you need to do these things if you want to seriously challenge and get people moving in an urban environment. That includes things like active cooling strategies, so that if someone's going to be outside, you have to give them a moment of rest and respite. And it also includes other things like dust mitigation. In the GCC, we have some of the worst air quality in the world, not because of particulates from industry, but rather from dust. And so respiratory illness is a significant issue, something that we do need to address and are addressing in the cities of the Gulf. So one of the other things that we've tried to do in projects like this is address psychological health. Environmental psychology has established very clearly that people who have a view of the outdoors, and in particular things like trees and water, are in an office environment 20% more productive, in a hospital environment much less likely to require pain medication, much faster to recover. So it was very much an intention of the plan here to make sure that every indoor environment was connected to an outdoor environment, that cafes grew their own food so there was access to healthy food, that in all cases there is a strong connection with those everyday experiences of natural environments. But there is also standards that are very rapidly becoming accepted. Many of you will have heard of the Well Building Standard, which is a kind of sustainability and wellness standard, and it's something actually we're quite proud to have been involved in creating. Perkins+Will was one of the founder firms of the Well Building Standard. But there's also more simple standards. There's recently the Fitwell standard that encourages companies to, within their buildings, get their staff moving. And again, these are all very practical, simple things that can be done in just about any environment. We also try to make outdoor environments actively contribute. So the landscape of these places needs to encourage that outdoor activity, needs to be biologically active urban environments where things like tree planting provides opportunities for food. So why not plant fruit trees? This entire region has a rich history of a food landscape, and the Oasis is the perfect example. So these things all combine into an environment where health and wellness is the obvious choice. So that's what we mean by place. I mean, the second thing that we talk about is often this idea of population health. And I've already touched on the fact that we do have these very serious challenges in terms of obesity and diabetes. We have to essentially do things that encourage people to walk on a daily basis. This project is something we've just recently completed for a senior living community. Not a retirement village, but somewhere where people over 50 would choose to live a healthier lifestyle. And it was obviously based on the idea of older people living an active life rather than descending into ill health. Now, as you'll see in most of the imagery, it was entirely focused on the idea of creating a walking pedestrian street experience in multiple dimensions through the project, of engaging with things like beaches, of encouraging the healthy activities. And you won't see any vehicles in any of these views because vehicles were not present on the surface of the project. So it was also about creating an ecosystem of everything that someone needs to live a healthy lifestyle within walking distance. And so a lot of our early efforts was, how do we provide something that for someone in what is probably now the middle ages of their life, 50 plus, could have everything they need within a walking distance in a convenient and enjoyable environment. And so there was multiple sort of radial pathways where people could get to whatever they needed whenever they wanted by walking. It was not possible to do it by car. And so that, again, on a smaller scale, is not that difficult to achieve. The third thing, and this is something that hasn't really been well explored in this region but could be, is partnerships. What we mean by partnerships is a health district as a kind of hub for healthy lifestyles that brings together all of these health providers. That could be as simple as just making sure that the district is accessible to everyone, but it could also be things like, how do we link to where people like to bike or run? And we do have tools to tell us where that happens. How do we involve donor corporations, people like Nike or any health institution that wants to contribute to a healthy environment? How do we involve them in an urban development? How do we look at health institutions? And I'm going to show you an example where the entire project focused around health and wellness with a particular focus on healing in the Islamic world, or traditional healing in the Islamic world. This is an example of what we talk about with partnerships. Any of you are familiar with Strava? It's basically just an application that you put on your phone that helps you track where you're running. How far did you run? Where did you go? How far did you bike? Where did you go? And it's an online map. Everyone's data is captured in this, and it's publicly available. So what you see here is Dubai, Muscat, Abu Dhabi. It's all online and available there. This particular project that we were looking at is in the hills above Muscat, and it was a health and wellness district with fabulous views over the city of Muscat. But it was also something where the investors wanted it to be Sharia compliant. So it couldn't be something that was driven by hotels and consumption of alcohol. It had to be something that we felt was around health and wellness. How did we work with partner organisations? Well, first of all, the site was already we already had people running and jogging around these places, riding bicycles. So it was about, in a way, how do we plug into that existing network? There was also a partnership formed with an Islamic Healing Institute that looked to reinvigorate some of the traditional medicine approaches in the region. And these became the anchors for the project. So being a mountaintop site, we also had to ensure that it was an environment that could be healthily occupied. And one of the key things for anyone who knows Muscat knows that you must keep away from things like wadis because they flow very vigorously. So we started our analysis with where does water flow? Where are the buildable areas of the site? But then very quickly looked at how do we plug into these existing networks of activity, both in terms of road access, but more importantly in terms of things like pedestrian access and cycling, and also more actively hiking and mountainside sort of health activities. And those things actually came together to form a web that told us where the project should go and what it should include. It was very intentionally focused around this idea of adventure sports or leisure and wellness. And this has become something that we're seeing increasing interest in, particularly in this region of the world. But as I say, actually when we look at these things, it tells us what we need to do. This is less about sort of imposing an idea and more on reading the urban environment and figuring out how we make more healthy places. That includes looking at traditional systems like the Falage irrigation system and multicultural oases and how we can incorporate both water recycling, effective water use and also food creation in urban environments. So we looked at that. We decentralised things like water treatment. We used traditional systems like the reed bed systems that are native to this region to treat wastewater on site. That gave us a water source, which also gave us a way to create a dam and a source of water, but also a source of energy in terms of micro hydroelectricity. And so this also was combined with where do we grow vegetation, how do we grow that vegetation with what water, and how does that become a food source? And so when we get down to the district level, all of these elements are already in there. The living environments are again designed to be connected, to be the places that you walk between, that healthy choice is the obvious choice. And very much focused on the sense of an active outdoor lifestyle. This obviously has to be an alluring and attractive area so that people actually choose to live in that kind of healthy environment. Most of us will quite happily choose that. And if we look back at any point in history, all sort of traditional urban environments were focused on this idea of a walk shed where we had everything we needed. Just to conclude, the final area is what we call performance, and that's about how do we measure how healthy an environment is. And this is where we're seeing sort of direct impacts in terms of healthcare providers, hospitals, and the way that they're changing their model of care. What we see in a way is our urban developments are ways to measure the performance of healthcare. And we see that being realised in a number of ways. But I'm going to use a specific example of a healthcare project that we've done here in Dubai. King's College Hospital recently announced that they're building a hospital facility in Dubai Hills, and we were fortunate enough to be the consultant who designed the project. But what was sort of underpinning this project was a different model of healthcare. It wasn't a single large hospital that everyone drove to, but a smaller hospital with a series of satellite clinics that are built in different areas around the city that don't require you to necessarily go to a hospital. So this is the hospital that acts as the primary hub within that network, but it's supported by a series of separate satellite clinics. Within Dubai Hills, it's actually a site that's embedded within the residential environment. So again, it was a key focus for us to make sure that you could walk up to this place. Many of us have been to hospitals or healthcare facilities in the region that it's simply not possible to walk up to the facility, or simply not practical. And so it became a particular focus of ours to imagine the residents of Dubai Hills choosing to walk into this area. And there is basically the determination of a public space that leads to this area. But the being able to walk up to it or having garden spaces within it was a fundamental design driver. And this is a character that we're now bringing to the satellite clinics, which are being embedded in the urban environments around this location. And so even in the sense of a traditional hospital, we see changes happening about how healthcare providers see benefit in decentralising their services. They see benefit rather than building larger, more island-like hospitals, doing a hub and spoke model that actually has real-time sort of feedback in terms of, well, this clinic is seeing a spike in this kind of health problem, there must be a health issue in that area. And so that is, we're seeing very distinct sort of tiebacks to the broader design of urban environments. So with that, I just come back to this central idea as a conclusion, that if we can, as urban designers, as planners, as an urban environment, if we can eliminate the root causes of most of our health problems, we will overall achieve much greater results than building bigger hospitals. So with that, thank you. I think I may have run over time a bit, so happy to receive your questions, and I'll be around if anyone wants to ask. Thank you.